Thank you to those watching remotely and joining us for today's update. My name is Breton Murphy, and I'm the Managing Director of Corporate Communications for the Halifax Regional Municipality. Today, we have remarks from Mayor Mike Savage, followed by our CAO, Jacques Dubé. I'll then open the floor to questions from media, and we'll conclude with some final words from Mayor Savage. Mayor Savage, over to you.
Thank you very much, Breton. I'm pleased to be back here with the CAO, Jacques Dubé, and also with our interpreters who are in another room so that we observe social distancing protocols. Thank you for joining us today. This past Easter weekend was, for many of us, I'm sure, very different than in years past. A time of great significance for many religions. Easter for us is a time when we would normally be enjoying family and perhaps being outdoors. And I know that I certainly felt the sting of not being able to be with my whole family. So I want to begin today by thanking the vast majority of citizens who continue to follow public health protocols, for thinking of others before themselves, and for helping to make progress against COVID-19. Public health professionals advise that these are critical days in limiting the spread of the virus. So it's imperative that we stay the course and continue to obey public health, maintaining physical distance, staying home, limiting gatherings, and staying away from public spaces like parks and playgrounds. This is a directive from Public Health in Nova Scotia, and we follow it. If it's confusing, we have at 311 a system where people can call and get more information about where they should go and where they shouldn't. This morning, we're providing an update on municipal response, the ongoing municipal response to this ongoing pandemic. And I'm pleased to be here with Jacques, who will provide an operational update when I conclude my remarks. I would urge residents to visit halifax.ca to access up-to-date municipal information and sign up for HFX Alert, the municipality's mass notification system. Subscribers receive urgent and non-urgent notifications by phone, email, and/or text message. Now, I want people to know that the work of the city and the work of regional council is continuing. Yesterday, we held our third meeting in the age of COVID. Issues are being addressed, decisions are being made, and work is getting done. It is a simple fact that times are tough for very many people. Many people are hurting. Household budgets and business bottom lines have been negatively impacted throughout this region, and relief will be needed in a number of phases and from all orders of government. Yesterday at our council meeting, we unanimously passed a number of measures to provide immediate short-term relief to residents who are struggling through a period of financial insecurity. Deferral of property tax from April 30th to June the 1st. That is now the due date. To be clear, this is a deferral. If you can pay your taxes, pay them. We've also reduced the interest rate charged on arrears and suspended NSF fees. Now, it's critical to understand that this is only the first step. Short-term measures to provide immediate relief to those who need it while we work through longer-term solutions. And I want to acknowledge the great work of our HRM finance team led by Jane Fraser, who have been working very diligently on these measures that will help soften the financial blow for many households and businesses. Staff continue to work with the province, the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, and the Association of Municipal Administrators on longer-term relief efforts, including looking at targeted support for those who need it the most. As well, I've had conversations with the Premier and other ministers on the same topic. It's expected that recommendations will come from staff by the end of May. Discussions continue with the federal government and with our colleagues at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and the Big City Mayors Caucus. I want to acknowledge Councillor Bill Karsten from Halifax, who's the president of FCM, and I also want to thank our federal colleagues for their work. All municipalities across Canada face both financial and legislative challenges in the wake of COVID-19. Part of that is the challenge of simple financial capacity. Keep in mind that of all the taxes collected in Canada, less than 10% are collected by municipalities. Yet many of the frontline work, particularly during COVID-19, is done by us. Police, fire, solid waste, transit. These jobs must be done, in fact, are considered to be essential in most cases. Other work, parks and transportation and public works, are call centers, financial support to residents and financial matters, communicating with our customers. These are all vital as well. In the past few weeks, I have been in constant contact with colleagues across the country, members of the Big City Mayors Caucus. We have had many meetings and many conversations. Yesterday, I spoke with Mayor Cecil Clark of Cape Breton. All of us are bleeding cash right now, and all are continuing to serve our residents and businesses. Last week, you would have seen the City of Vancouver make an urgent appeal to their provincial government for $200 million. The headline was Vancouver facing bankruptcy. Toronto was losing $20 million a week on transit alone. Both CBRM and Halifax must keep transit running. It's been deemed an essential service. And in our case, we lose over $3 million a month. Now, we will support our residents and our businesses in need, but we simply can't do it without support. We have worked closely with the province as well as our national government, and the cooperation, I must say, has been tremendous over the last month or so. I salute both governments for their work in keeping us safe and offering assistance and support for those who need help. The way forward for us as municipalities can only be managed with such help. No municipality can do this alone. And even with financial backstop, we face compounding problems. Running short this year, which is inevitable, will be made worse by a reduced tax base next year due to slowdowns and closures in our businesses in 2020. Halifax had one of the strongest and fastest growing economies in Canada before COVID-19, and we intend to come out of COVID-19 the same way. We have managed our affairs well, making good investments and keeping the tax rate low. But we are not immune. We will make difficult choices, and I assure you there is no joy in these choices. But we need to make changes, and we need to do more to serve our residents and our businesses. Now, my office continues to hear from people who are struggling, from those who've lost their job or businesses trying to cope in the wake of indefinite closure. But we also hear incredible stories of community coming together, of individuals and businesses stepping up to support those in need and help in this fight. Take, for example, the Canteen on Portland Street in Dartmouth, who, with help from a grant from Community Food Centres Canada, is preparing and packaging 300 to 400 free meals every week in support of the Dartmouth North Community Food Centre and Margaret's House. They're joined by organizations like our Mobile Food Market, Feed Nova Scotia, Chebucto Connections, local churches and organizations who are focused on emergency food access to ensure that we soften the blow. A Musquodoboit Harbor tool and die company, Mackenzie Atlantic, has signed on to produce more than 1 million face shields for frontline healthcare workers in this province. That is another example. And I know that Councillor Hensby has been working with them and has been supportive of the work that they're doing. They've taken on this work in addition to their regular workload as a supplier to the government. Take the countless stories shared over social media of supportive chalk walk messages, volunteers delivering groceries and medicine to seniors and those who are self-isolating, as well as drive-by birthday parties and socially distancing neighborhood shows of support for healthcare workers. We know that there are more hard days ahead, but stories like this show our community and collective resiliency in the face of this challenge. Again, I want to offer my most sincere thanks, and that of our council, to the women and men working in essential services, keeping our municipality and our province going. The frontline healthcare workers and emergency responders, and those working behind the scenes. our transit operators, our solid waste collectors, to farmers, truck drivers, delivery drivers, sanitation workers, grocery store clerks, those who are working in the financial sector, to everybody who's working at this difficult time, thank you. Please continue to follow the direction of public health under this state of emergency. Stay home, stay apart, but stay together as a community. These restrictions will not last forever, but we'll get there much sooner if we all do our part. Thank you, and I will now turn it over to Jacques Dubé, our CAO, for his update. Jacques?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Merci, Monsieur le Maire, and thank you for your leadership. Much appreciated. And as always, I want to thank everyone across the municipality, HRM, for their dedicated efforts to help reduce the spread of COVID-19. I know it doesn't get any easier as the weeks go by, but the ongoing efforts demonstrated by all of you have kept many Nova Scotians safe. Our staff continues to work very hard to make adjustments to service levels to keep our residents safe. Thank you for your commitment during this challenging time. I cannot overstate the importance of our collective response. By committing ourselves to follow the directives of public health, lives will be saved. In relation to service updates, over the long weekend, Halifax Transit has implemented further measures to help reduce the spread of COVID-19. These changes will significantly reduce capacity, and as a result, transit should only be used for essential travel, like going to work and buying groceries. And again, those of you who are feeling ill should not use any transit service until your health returns to normal. Alternating seats are now blocked off with appropriate signage on conventional buses. This measure will further reduce capacity by approximately 50%, depending on the model of the bus. Alternating seating is also blocked off with signage at some terminals. Capacity in all ferries has been further reduced to 25 passengers per trip, and food and drink is now prohibited on our ferries. In addition to these changes, several other measures have been taken by Halifax Transit to help reduce the spread of COVID-19, including an increased frequency in wipe-downs of high-touch areas and surfaces, the elimination of fares, having bus users enter and exit through the rear doors, and limiting passengers on buses to seated passengers only. All of these changes support the municipality's commitment to safe social distancing. Halifax Transit has been designated by the province of Nova Scotia as an essential service under the current provincial state of emergency and continues to operate on a reduced schedule with significant adjustments to our service model. We are focusing on delivering the highest level of municipal service that can be reasonably provided, while continuing to take steps that help minimize the spread of COVID-19. Moving forward, service levels will continue to be adjusted as necessary, based on available operational resources. In relation to the tax bills and the due date deferral, with the effects of COVID-19 continuing to impact the municipality, one area of concern for many residents and businesses has been the status of tax bills. And as Mayor Savage has said in his remarks, Regional Council yesterday decided unanimously to provide immediate relief to both residential and commercial customers. These efforts include the deferral of the interim tax bill due date from April 30th, 2020 to June 1st, 2020, the suspension of non-sufficient fund fees, and the reduction of interest rate charged on arrears from 15% per annum to 10% per annum. With these changes, it is critical that those who can pay their taxes continue to do so in a timely fashion. The tax deferral measure adopted yesterday is phase one. We are working with other municipalities in Nova Scotia to determine an approach to tax deferrals going forward. And we appreciate the conversations that we're having with our partner municipalities and with the province of Nova Scotia. Tax revenue makes up 82% of the municipality's revenue. Operating expenses total approximately $100 million per month, And while the municipality is financially sound, a significant amount of cash flow is required to provide services, pay vendors and suppliers, and continue with capital projects that support the economy. Our fiscal challenge is $223 million. Of that, $188 million is tax deferral, and the other $35 million is lost revenue, such as transfer tax, investment income, transit, and parking. These numbers are based on assumptions of when services will resume and are very fluid. For example, we assume that the winter recreation programming will be going forward, so the revenue from ice rentals has not been reduced significantly. We are assessing our municipal budget daily, and adjustments will have to be made going forward. Our decisions are based on what we know now and what experts are saying might happen. It is a very fluid and unprecedented fiscal challenge. Nobody has a crystal ball on this situation. We have been and will continue to assess our financial picture. The plan is to come back to Regional Council with a significantly revised budget and updated recommendations on tax deferral by the end of May to permit the good work that's ongoing now between the NSFM, AMA Nova Scotia, and the provincial government between now and the end of May. In relation to staffing, in light of the tax deferral and other measures such as the elimination of bus fares and the suspension of recreational programming, COVID-19 is having a negative impact on our revenue streams. As a responsible public sector employer, we continue to look at our human resources to ensure they align with services we are providing. The municipality takes its role of financial stewardship very seriously, and there's no greater trust in safeguarding our residents' tax dollars. When something like this happens, whether you lead a business or a government administration, you have to face very difficult decisions regarding staffing. Like all administrations at this time, we are not immune to this painful reality. We have made the decision to reduce budgeted staffing levels by approximately 1,480 persons. These casual, temporary, and seasonal employees who normally provide service to the public cannot, due to the pandemic. This number includes more than 500 seasonal employees who are not currently employed, but will no longer be hired this spring and summer as planned, including seasonal recreation staff. The financial impact is approximately $15 million, which is a high-level half-year estimate. Specific details about personnel matters remain confidential to protect the privacy of our employees, and therefore I will not be elaborating further on this matter. That said, as with anything COVID-19 related, it is difficult to make predictions about future decisions regarding adjustments to service and staffing levels. Effective yesterday, I instituted a hiring freeze as part of our goal to minimize layoffs. We are committed to our staff, and layoffs is not a decision we take lightly. That said, I cannot at this point guarantee there will be no further layoffs. To anyone who will no longer be working with us in the short term, I want to extend my appreciation and gratitude for your services. This is not a scenario any of us anticipated, and certainly not one any of us desired. We will get back to providing full service levels in all business units in the future, and I, like every member of Regional Council, our mayor, and our leadership team, hope that future is very soon. In conclusion, it is very hard to believe we're now in the second month of COVID-19 outbreak in Nova Scotia. It has been a very challenging time for everyone, but we can remain confident. We will succeed in our collective effort to return the economy to its previous very positive state, as the mayor alluded to earlier. Two things are now very clear. First, we know we can overcome this. There is proof that it can be done. Second, we know that we have to dig even deeper and stay disciplined to keep the strong momentum we've built. Nova Scotia is very much in the middle of this battle. We will win, but we need to keep fighting harder than ever, and we need everyone to fight harder together. Thank you to everyone working to reduce the spread of COVID-19, residents, public servants, businesses. Please stay safe and stay home. I will now summarize my comments in French, after which we will take questions. Comme toujours, je tiens à remercier tous les résidents de la municipalité pour leurs efforts dévoués pour aider à réduire la propagation du COVID-19. Je sais que cela ne devient pas plus facile au fil des semaines, mais les efforts constants démontrés par vous tous ont permis à de nombreux Néo-Écossais à sauver leur vie. Et merci à nos employés municipaux qui ne lâchent pas face aux défis dans les circonstances. En ce qui a trait au service de transport commun, au cours de la longue fin de semaine, Halifax Transit a mis en œuvre d'autres mesures pour aider à réduire la propagation du COVID-19. Ces changements réduiront considérablement la capacité et, par conséquent, le transport en commun devrait être utilisé uniquement pour des déplacements essentiels comme le travail, l'achat d'épicerie et rendez-vous essentiels. Ceux qui se sentent malades ne devraient utiliser aucun service de transport en commun jusqu'à ce que leurs états de santé redeviennent normaux. Les sièges alternatifs sont maintenant bloqués avec une signalisation appropriée sur les autobus conventionnels. Cette mesure réduira encore la capacité d'environ 50% selon le modèle d'autobus. L'allocation des places en alternance est également bloquée par la signalisation à certains terminaux. La capacité de tous nos traversiers a encore été réduite à 25 passagers par voyage. La nourriture et les boissons sont désormais interdites à bord. Comme le maire Savage l'a dit dans ses remarques hier, le Conseil régional a voté pour fournir un soulagement immédiat aux clients résidentiels et commerciaux en ce qui a trait à la taxe foncière. Ces efforts comprennent le report de l'échéance de la facture de taxe foncière du 30 avril au 1er juin 2020, la suspension des frais de fonds non suffisants et la réduction de taux d'intérêt appliqués sur les arriérés de 15% par an à 10% par an. Avec ces changements, il est essentiel que ceux qui peuvent payer leurs taxes foncières continuent de le faire en temps important. La mesure de report de taxes foncières adoptée hier est la première phase. Nous travaillons avec d'autres municipalités de la Nouvelle-Écosse et la province pour déterminer une approche en matière de report de taxes foncières. Le défi fiscal de la municipalité est de 223 millions de dollars et de ce montant, 188 millions de dollars correspondent à un rapport de taxes foncières, tandis que 35 millions de dollars sont des pertes de revenus tels que les droits de transfert de propriété, les revenus de placement, le transport en commun et le stationnement. Nous avons été et continuerons d'évaluer notre situation financière. Le plan est de revenir au conseil municipal avec un budget considérablement révisé et des recommandations mises à jour sur le rapport de taxes foncières d'ici la fin mai. Nous avons décidé de réduire les effectifs budgétés d'environ 1 480 personnes. Ces employés occasionnels, temporaires et saisonniers qui fournissent normalement des services au public ne peuvent pas en raison de la pandémie. Ce nombre comprend plus de 500 employés saisonniers qui ne sont pas actuellement employés, mais qui ne seront plus embauchés au printemps et en été, comme prévu, y compris le personnel saisonnier des loisirs. Les détails spécifiques concernant les questions de personnel restent confidentiels pour protéger la vie privée de nos employés. Par conséquent, je ne développerai pas davantage cette question. Comme pour tout ce qui concerne COVID-19, il est difficile de faire des prévisions sur les décisions futures concernant les ajustements au niveau des services et de dotation. La municipalité n'est pas en mesure de garantir qu'il n'y aura plus de licenciements, car nous devrons peut-être continuer d'ajuster les services si nécessaire, afin de respecter les directives de santé publique et de s'adapter aux implications actuelles du COVID-19. En conclusion, la Nouvelle-Écosse est encore bien au milieu de cette bataille. Nous gagnerons, mais nous devons continuer ensemble à nous battre plus fort que jamais afin de ramener l'économie à son état inégalé il y a seulement 4 semaines. Merci beaucoup. We'll now take questions.
Thank you very much, CAO Dubé and Mayor Savage. We have a number of media outlets on the line. As in past media briefings, I'll call upon a reporter from each media outlet to ask one question and one follow-up question. We'll start the questions with Todd Battis from CTV National. Todd, what's your question?
Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for your time. We've seen in other cities across the country, notably Ottawa and Quebec City, mention reductions in staff. I'm wondering what form that could take moving ahead. Would those potentially be layoffs, or could employees be furloughed? How could that look?
Thank you, Todd, for your question. As I mentioned in my comments, we're looking at all of our employees, and my objective, frankly, is to keep everyone employed to the extent possible. That is the primary objective. If we are to lay off further employees, they would be, as previously, as the current number of 1,480 employees that are currently affected by the layoffs. They would be temporary layoffs with the intent of bringing them back when things return to normal, when the service levels return to normal. So these are, whatever we do in the future, it'll be in the same sort of spirit and intent to have people come back to work when service levels return and going forward. At this point, I can't guarantee that there'll be no layoffs, but I also can't guarantee that there'll be any further layoffs. So at this point, we're evaluating pretty much daily, and we're making decisions as circumstances change. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Do you have a follow-up?
If I may,
Yeah.
do you have a deadline as to when you would make a call on the summer program?
All summer programs have been pretty much canceled already. All recreational programs are now eliminated. We're looking at the fall. We're not sure what will happen going forward. It'll all depend on the advice we get from public health in terms of lifting restrictions. But, at this point, we mentioned in my comments, we're not looking at reducing, for example, revenue associated with ice rentals. However, that could change. In other words, we may not be able to offer programming that we would normally start in late August and early September for ice rentals, for example. But at this point, all summer programs, summer camps, those types of activities are all canceled at this point.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Todd. Next, I'll ask Carolyn Ray from CBC to ask a question. Carolyn?
Hi, thank you. My question's for the mayor. You referred to the article about Vancouver where the headline said it was at risk of going bankrupt. Is Halifax at risk of going bankrupt?
No, I don't think that we're at risk of going bankrupt in the short term, but we're not like other orders of government in that we don't have the ability to borrow unlimited amounts of money and pay it off or put it added on to our debts. So there are legislative handcuffs on us that we're looking to the provincial government to perhaps assist us with in terms of borrowing as well as direct assistance. But we're like any organization. 82% of our revenue comes from property tax. If we defer everybody's property tax, we have no money coming in. We'd be laying off everybody, including essential services. So I think our position is, at the present time, is as strong as it can be because we went into this in a strong position. But we simply don't have the financial capacity to maintain the services that we need to. We're very hopeful in discussions both with the province and with the federal government, discussions that we've had at the Big City Mayor's Caucus, for example, directly with the Deputy Prime Minister, and discussions we've had here with Minister Porter and other ministers of the local government and the Premier. So I think everybody recognizes that in terms of Nova Scotia, we're a big city. We're a large percentage of the GDP. It's in nobody's interest not to find a solution, and the message that we've been getting, and I think the discussions that Pam Mood and others have been having from NSFM and from the municipal administrators is that there's a recognition that we have an issue and that we have to find a way through it. And I believe we will, but it's not insignificant. Every single city faces the same challenge. We have police, we have fire, we have transit, we have solid waste workers, we have a number of people who are deemed to be essential and others that are hugely important. So I don't want to unduly alarm anybody, but the fact is we get our money from property tax, and the rest of it, the other 18%, we're no longer collecting transit, parking fines, recreation programs, and things like that. So it's a significant situation, and I'm convinced that other orders of government recognize that we all have to step up together.
Carolyn, do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, this is for Mr. Dubé. You talked about a date when your sweeping services will resume. Can you tell us more about what that date you're kind of working around at this point?
Now, Carolyn, if I'm hearing you correctly, are you asking that if there's a date when services will resume?
For your estimates, you say when you're looking at your financial estimates, you mentioned you were working around the date?
Right, in terms of financial estimates, identifying what we're looking at as a date moving forward for services to resume.
Well, as you can appreciate, we're making decisions pretty much daily, and we're looking at our projections going forward. Right now, all of our business units are busy recasting budgets and doing projections going forward. As mentioned earlier, for example, in the recreational program area, we haven't reduced significantly the revenue we're anticipating getting from our ice rentals. So we're really looking out. Our estimates right now are really focused on between now and sometime in early September, mid-September. But that, as we move forward through the pandemic curve, that will be adjusted. So right at this moment, we mentioned in my comments, we have about a $223 million gap, which is comprised of $188 million of tax deferral, and about another $35 million in lost revenue that we'll never get back. Those numbers are changing pretty much daily, and we'll assess that daily. But at this point, our projections are basically focused on the next 3 to 4 months, and we'll just keep rolling that forward until we get a better picture. Between now and the end of May, we should have a better picture because we intend to come back to council with a revised budget, including the closeout of our fiscal year 19-20, which will then determine what the surplus level would be at the end of March. So we'll have a good appreciation of that as well. So as we get more time, our estimates will become more accurate and more predictable. Let's put it that way.
Thanks very much, Carolyn. I'll now next ask Alexander Kwan from Global News to ask a question. Alexander?
Thank you. This is for Jacques. I'm wondering, the federal government has created a series of payroll rebates and is basically begging businesses across the country to keep as many people on staff as possible. So why is the HRM choosing to lay off people now?
I think the question was why didn't HRM move with layoffs before now?
Right, particularly in light of, I think, Alexander's question, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alexander, is given the recent announcement about the payroll rebate at the federal level, why did the municipality at this time make its decision about staffing levels?
Well, as you can well appreciate, we have 5,000 people that work for HRM, and since this pandemic came upon us, we have been working pretty much day and night on examining the HR situation. So it does take time to go through. In this particular case, 1,480 individuals were affected by this. They all are employed in different business units. They all have different circumstances, perhaps attached to a different collective bargaining unit. Those kinds of issues. So we've taken the time to have a meaningful, deep dive and a compassionate dive, supported by strong communications across all business units with our collective bargaining units. These issues take time. So we have come out from this in 4 weeks, and I'm proud of the team, proud of our team at HR, for example, who have have done a lot of the heavy lifting on this to actually come out with this level of layoffs. I would also challenge everyone to take a look at other municipalities across the country, other levels of government, to see what they have done. I can tell you that many municipalities east of Quebec are well ahead of us in terms of the curve. I can assure you that we have been very responsive, and our response to this has been very rapid and effective in comparison. So it does take time. We're dealing with people, and we have to be sensitive to their needs and understand what our options are going forward as well. Thank you.
Alexander, do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, I'm wondering if we can get a little bit clearer guidance on access to the Halifax Commons. A lot of people have questions on exactly when people are allowed to walk through and what the rules are. So if we can get clear guidance, that'd be great.
Thank you for the question. I'll acknowledge that there may have been some confusion in the minds of some people around the Halifax Common, but it's effectively a park. We have worked with Parks and Recreation and Halifax Police, and if you notice recently, we have actually flagged the walking paths that are used for transportation purposes, because people do use that park to go from point A to point B. So we recognize that, and actually I've now flagged, put these very tiny flags along all the pathways that are permitted to be utilized by residents. Parks Canada, the federal government, has determined and has changed their view from the initial determination. If you recall, the areas outside of the roadways, where people like to use the hill area and those kinds of areas, that was previously open to the public. But as of last week, Heritage Canada made a different determination, and it ordered all of it to be closed. So we're working hand in hand with Heritage Canada in relation to the Citadel Hill as well. We're taking the orders from public health seriously and making sure that people respect those orders and respect social distancing, and the measures we've put in place sort of midweek last week are the rules that we now have, and we'll continue to maintain going forward.
If I could just speak to that too. I recognize that this is a difficult issue for many people. I'm getting tired of seeing the same houses in my neighborhood, which I now know better than I ever knew before from my walks that my wife and I take. And it's restrictive. I'd much rather be at Shuby Park, but I can't. So there may be some ambiguities in the response to COVID. It's not a time for perfect, but it is a time to follow public health. And when it comes to following the public health rules, it's very clear. And we have to do that. We will do that. Our police are enforcing it at RCMP. It does start, as Chief Dan will tell you, and so will the Chief Superintendent of the RCMP. Nobody wants to be giving out tickets, but we have to follow that public health order. There are people who have lost their businesses. There are lots of people who've lost their jobs. There are many people making great sacrifices at a difficult time. So we ask people to understand that we have to enforce this order because it is to defeat COVID-19. And we will play our part. And I once again encourage people, if you have a question about where you can go for your walk, to call our call center at 311, who will triage it with the folks who are working very hard in our Parks and Recreation department. Thank you, Brett. Thank you, Alexander.
Thank you both. I'll next ask Zane Woodford from Saltwire Network to ask a question. Go ahead, Zane.
Hi there, this is a question for Jacques. How many of the layoffs are in the recreation department, and when were they notified?
Question was how many
Recreation individuals within Parks and Recreation were impacted by the layoffs, and when were they notified?
I can't give you the exact number for Parks and Recreation. I would say the majority would have been in Parks and Recreation. They were notified last week. So all of last week, people were notified. So everybody's now aware, and appropriate supports have been put in place to support them in terms of going forward. They understand what the situation is, and we have put in some measures to assist them going forward.
Thank you, Zane. Do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, I've seen a copy of the letter that was sent to those staff, and it doesn't say anything about temporary. So have you been clear with employees that the layoffs are temporary for them?
Yeah, look, the conversations that supervisors have had is that effectively our intention is to have them return to the workforce when operational needs require further staffing and to return back to a normal situation. So that's where we are, and that's what we'll be doing.
Thanks very much. I'll next ask Samantha Long from All Nova Scotia to ask a question. Samantha?
Hello. So I was just wondering if there is any breakdown of how many employees being laid off for full-time versus part-time?
Samantha, and I will ask some of you, and bear with us in terms of catching all of the question, if we can kind of slow down as best we can and speak clearly. If I heard you correctly, Samantha, you're asking about a breakdown of, was it permanent versus part-time?
Yes.
In terms of the most recent decisions impacting staffing levels.
Yes.
First of all, I will say there all of the folks that have been laid off at this point all fall under the category of seasonal, part-time, and temporary. There have been no permanent employees at this point that have been laid off. I can't guarantee that won't happen, nor can I guarantee that it will happen at this point. We're assessing daily, and we'll maybe make decisions going forward as things evolve with the pandemic.
Samantha, do you have a follow-up question?
And I was just looking for clarification on which departments are seeing the biggest layoff numbers. Is Parks and Recreation the largest, or what other departments?
So in addition to Parks and Recreation, what other departments are impacted?
Well, there would have been, I don't have the exact list in front of me, but there are several departments that have been affected. TPW would come to mind, but I can certainly provide you with a list later on as to the total number of departments that have seen layoffs.
If I could just speak to that too, that when about 5 weeks ago, when all of the dramatic action started taking place around COVID-19, Jacques and his team made the decision that we would try to keep people whole for the period as we adjusted to COVID-19. At that point in time, that's what we did. We paid people who were contracted to do summer camps, for example, but couldn't do the summer camps in order to help people through that transition period. Clearly, that is not something that is sustainable in the long term. So these decisions have been made. I know that our HR department has been working very hard and has a very good eye on what programs are available, the CERB, for example, and others, and where people might be able to qualify for assistance from other governments through this whole process as well. And this is just a simple fact of life that at this point in time, we can't continue to pay people for work that isn't being done. There's no love in that. There's no joy in that. It's simply a fact of life. And even full-time employees are being asked what they can do if their regular work is not enough to keep them busy working from home, what other work can be done. So there is a continual realignment of our HR, and that work will continue.
Thank you very much. I'll now next take a question from Frank Campbell with the Chronicle Herald. Frank, your question?
Hello, good morning. This question is for Mr. Dubé. So the transit union has been calling for alternate seating and a reduction of passenger load on buses for weeks. Why did it take so long for the measure to be put in place, and does it go far enough to keep employees and passengers safe?
Catch it.
And bear with me, Frank. In terms of the question asked, you were mentioning that there have been steps taken with transit, including alternate and staggered seating, And,
That's correct.
and you're wondering what other measures are being taken to protect both, both riders and staff?
No, I'm wondering, since the transit union has been calling for these measures for some time, why did it take so long? And are the measures put in place doing enough to keep employees and passengers safe?
So I believe the question is that since the transit union has been asking for these types of measures to be
Yep.
implemented, why has it taken so long for the municipality to do that? And what steps are being taken to ensure safety of employees and residents?
Okay.
Thank you very much, Frank, for the question. First of all, we have the measures we have taken have been implemented in a timely fashion based on evidence and assessment of what everybody else is doing across North America, and based on advice we were getting from Dr. Strang in public health. So we have implemented these measures sort of very systematically, including boarding and disembarking from the bus, from the rear of the bus. We've been moving forward with other measures more recently, including the separation of seating and blocking off of different seats, both in terminals and on buses. These are all measures that have been taken thoughtfully based on advice and consideration of best practices across North America. Dave Riggi, who is the Director of Public Transit, is on the executive of the Canadian Urban Transit Association. He speaks with his colleagues literally daily across the country, and we're all working with each other to ensure that we're being very consistent in the approach. I can appreciate the great work that Kenny Wilson and his team are doing at ATU. They're very passionate about the safety of their employees and passengers, as we are. So we're working together and making sure that there's a good information exchange literally every day amongst all of us. And as we move forward, we'll continue to make changes as they're identified.
If I could just speak to that too, Frank. People forget how quickly moving COVID is and how every jurisdiction everywhere has taken a staged approach to this. 6 weeks ago, I did a video telling people to bump elbows because we shouldn't shake hands, and people said, that's an overreaction. 6 weeks ago. Probably 5 weeks ago, the province brought an order in that gatherings of more than 150 people are no longer allowed. And then it was 50 people, and then it was 5 people. We were originally told we could walk in the woods and in our parks and trails if we kept our social distance, and then that was changed. There has been a staged reaction, and Nova Scotia, I think, has taken a strong action as any other jurisdiction, and rightfully so. In New York City still has transit running in the height of the epicenter of the United States. We recognize the challenges for our transit operators and others, but people need to get to the hospital. People need to get to work, need to get to the grocery store, need to do essential work. But it's been a staged reaction, and each way along the way in Nova Scotia, on transit and other things, we have done this in concert with public health. The cleaning down of the buses, the entrance through the back, which meant we couldn't take fares. These have all been things that we've done along with other transit authorities, but also in concert with public health.
Thanks very much, Frank. Do you have a follow-up question?
I do not. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll next ask Kiera McKenna from the Coast to ask a question. Go ahead, Kiera.
Hi there. My first question is I wonder if there are any plans to get meetings with like the Board of Police Commissioners back up and running, especially when we're looking at an state of emergency that changes the way the police operate in our community.
Kiera, we're having some real challenges with clarity on your question. We can, and so we want to make sure we get your question. So we can do this two ways. I'll ask you to try to repeat it. If we continue to have a challenge, I'll ask you to email your question to Aaron, who's on the call, and I will read it to ensure that we get your question asked. But I'll ask you to try that one more time.
Okay. My question is if there's any plans to get meetings like the Board of Police Commissioners back up and running soon, especially considering the role of police investigators has changed quite a bit under this emergency.
I'm not quite getting that.
I really apologize, Kira, but I think we're not getting a proper connection with you on that. But if you do send an email now to Erin, who I know you have her email address on our public affairs team, I will read it aloud. And we have another question, and I'm going to ask Cassandra Nadeau-Lamarche from Radio-Canada, and I'll ask if you would, Cassandra, to ask your question, of course, in French, and then in English, and then Jacques will be able to ensure he responds in both French and English, but just so our listeners are hearing at the front end the question in both languages, if you would. So over to you, Cassandra, with your question.
Yeah, hi. So for this first debate, I'm just looking to get a sense of how many total employees does the municipality have, and so what is the percentage of the employees that have been laid off?
How many total employees?
Yeah, what the total number of employees currently at the municipality, and so the percentage that have been impacted by the staffing reduction.
Et merci beaucoup pour la question. Le nombre total des employés de la municipalité régionale d'Halifax est à peu près 5 000. On a licencié 1480 employés à demi-temps, saisonniers et temporaires. So the question was how many total employees do we have and how many were laid off recently. We have about 5,000 people that work for HRM. 1,480 were laid off recently. Those were casual, part-time, and seasonal employees.
Thanks very much, Cassandra. Do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, I'm just looking to have in French, if possible, if Mr. Bay can explain, are those layoffs temporary for now, or could they be permanent? So, si c'est possible juste de faire de ça en français, là.
Okay, thank you very much. Merci beaucoup pour la question. L'intention, c'est que les licenciements qu'on a entamés cette semaine, la semaine dernière en fait, sont temporaires dans le sens qu'on a l'intention de les ramener au sein de l'équipe de travail aussitôt que le besoin se présente, aussitôt que nos services reviennent au normal. Puis ça serait, évidemment, ça serait par phase parce que pas tous les services vont être ramenés au normal à la fois, normalement. Alors, on va regarder ça, disons, poste à poste, unité de travail par unité de travail. Mais l'intention est clairement qu'on va les ramener au travail aussitôt que le besoin est senti. Merci.
Thanks very much. If that wraps up all the questions, I would mention again, I know that Kiera was looking for to have a question answered. Haven't yet received that question, but we will be sure to follow up with you, Kiera, on your question, get an answer to you promptly. I'll now perhaps, now that we've concluded the Q&A session with the media, I'll return the microphone to Mayor Savage to say a few final words.
Thank you, Breton, and thank you to the residents and businesses of the Halifax Regional Municipality. The work that we're doing in the municipality will go on. Clearly that the decisions that have been made in terms of not bringing back contractors, term employees, seasonal workers is not something any of us enjoy or relish, and we hope that they're back. We hope that we can rehire them and that they can get back to work as soon as possible. It is tied into, of course, the issue of property tax and property tax deferrals. I again stress that municipalities are not like other orders of government. We don't have the ability to rack up large sums of debt, even in a good purpose. And we don't have the financial capacity either. Less than 10% of all your taxes goes to municipal governments. But we pay for the police, the fire, we pay for the people that pick up the garbage, we pay for those who are operating our buses. as well as the many other services that we have. So we have to take decisions in the best interest of all of the residents and businesses. The property tax deferral yesterday, I'll say again, was a short-term solution that allows us a bit of time to come back with a longer-term solution so that we can really help those who need help, whether it's a business or whether it's an individual. I would encourage you, I would call upon your sense of duty. If you can pay your taxes, pay your taxes. We do need the money. We have a limited amount of cash, and we need to pay those important resources, those supports that we provide to the community. I want to thank Premier McNeil. I want to thank Prime Minister Trudeau. I want to thank all public officials of all parties who are working shoulder to shoulder during this difficult time. And we do look to the federal and to the provincial governments for support in the days ahead. I'm confident that working together, we will get through this. We will provide support to those who most need the help. This city and this province will rebound. Until then, we all have to follow the rules. We all have to do our best, make difficult decisions in the long-term interest of Halifax and Nova Scotia. And I thank you for that from the bottom of my heart.